Good evening. How's everybody?
Good evening, Dr. Lamb.
What's going
Good
on?
evening.
Hot weather. Hot weather. I've had to cut my beard down some. My goatee. It's got hot. Summertime. Hey, Lordy. It's good to see everybody this evening. I believe it's about time to get started. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right. First thing to look at, as we do every week, is our weekly schedule. And so for this week, you were to locate copies of the emergency crisis plans. How long did it take you and your administrator to find it? Is it appropriate? Get a copy of your budget. Does it contain all the budget sources? List most 5 important steps in conduct the facilities walkthrough. How well did your school do? So, and we were working on OMA task 1 this week as well. So here are the stars of the week. And here are the things that caught my eye this week. So I don't know if everybody's with us or not. This is from both groups. I just write them down, but it's good stuff to listen. So Heather was our first one who had the discussion board. She was our early bird, but it was really good too. So I see Heather's with us tonight, so thank you. I love how she interacted with her principal, back and forth, asking questions.
Very successful corporate career in business.
Let me mute.
Oh,
Your
God.
role within you really empowered me to build a dream career.
Okay. Just unmute yourself if you need to talk. I've muted everybody now. The emergency plan, the budget were at hand, and Heather made a good point. Cell phone usages inside buildings sometimes get jammed. If I was going to take over a building, that's the first thing I'd do is jam cell phones. A lot of them have problems anyway. Boiler room's a hazard. Very, very thorough look at that. Keisha's was good as well. Very thorough. Met with the principal. I like that. Good job, Keisha. I like that you meet with the principal on these things. Amanda pointed out that there was a issue with a pipe vent that had been that way forever, and nobody at central office seemed to get excited about that. That'd be on my list of things that somebody's going to have to do that. Rebecca pointed out they had the rosters, but they were out of date. That's a good catch, Becca. I like that. I mean, what good is it to have the wrong rosters? I guess they just said rosters check. No, they got to be the right rosters. They can't be out of date. Faculty contacts have to be up to date. With all the coming and going to and froing since COVID, I bet half the faculty's changed over that time as well. Not only do you have to have this stuff, it has to actually be usable. That's a good catch, Rebecca. Thank you. Leslie had our first OMA task 1 already in, and it was a great one too. Very good, very thorough. Shakita, we're small. She was tonight. She's in the other group. Plan was not accessible. And she made a good point. Not only was the plan not accessible, they're small. If you don't have access to it, how can you update it? That's a pretty good idea. It needs to be at your fingertips, because if you have to go and hunt it, what's the likelihood that you're going to keep it up to date if you have to hunt it and it's not nearby? It's kind of like, I look at it just like your refrigerator. The stuff that you use all the time, you keep it up in front. The stuff that you never get, stuff that your relatives gave you at Christmas, you push it in the back. You don't ever bother it. But if you're going to use something, it needs to be up front. It needs to be easily accessible. That's a good catch. I like that. Anna brought up an issue, and this is, I am not a Mennonite. I am not, I'm not a Dunkard from back in the Middle Ages. I'm a technology person. But I'm going to tell you, a lot of times, digital access only, what if your cell phone's not working? You need a printed out copy of everything. That's why we call it the black box. Everything's supposed to be in hard copy in the black box. That's state law. It's got to be in the black box. It's got to be hard copy. So yes, it's good to have digital access where people can access it on their phones, because everybody got their phone. But if your phone's not working, you're blind. So you need, everything needs to be copied out. I like that Roger went through each part of the plan and commented and looked at each section. Didn't just say, well, it's here, and checked it off. He looked at how appropriate each one was. That's what you're supposed to do. I like that Leanne shared the results of her inventory with her principal. That's what you're supposed to do, Leanne. That's great. Sparkle had a great example of the black box in action, because they had an incident that happened. So Sparkle, tell us about that. That caught my eye. I like that.
So we have a COPE program, which is like a behavior program. It's phasing out. So next year, those students, so we only have like 2 or 3 students left. And so we were doing EOG on Thursday. We had a prep. And so he pulled all the fire alarms, throwing books out the window. First, we heard like one alarm in the building. I'm like, oh, well, let's see where that alarm. But then he started going to pull the whole school. So everybody went in the panic. He started running in the woods. And so kids were recording him and made a meme and said that he was going to blow up everybody in his site on Friday. So we got a hold to the parents, trying to tell them, well, Friday morning come. Now this is EOG, first, 8th grade, EOLA. Then all we know is the SWAT team is there. They're like getting all these calls. Parents are panicking. They're coming to get their kids. And it was just like a lot. He was suspended. We never found him. His parents came, but they said that they had to go get their other child. So they didn't have time to look for where he was going. And the officer went by the house and informed the parent that he's expelled for the rest of the year. He can't come back. If he does, he's going to jail. So the officer checked in actually today. And he was like, oh, you see how the police couldn't get me? He said the only time you'll see me is in jail. So he thought it was a joke, but it would end up being like traumatizing. We didn't get to start testing until about 10:30 in the morning. So yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, but the good news is their plan worked. And that's one of the things that Michelle spoke to in hers that caught my eye. It's a really good job from Michelle. Is all the tiers of evacuation, and your emergency plan printed out, because schools should have 3 tiers of evacuation. There should be something on your campus that you can get to, like the ball field. There should be one nearby that you walk to, like a church, and then there should be one that you get bused to. And you got to know what tier. So when your plan goes into place, you aren't going crazy. Now, I am not making light of the situation that happened at Butler High School, but it was literally the Keystone Cops a few years back when a kid tragically was shot and killed in the front lobby of the building. And they had all the emergency plans, but they didn't know what to do with them, or they didn't communicate. Some of the kids were on the ball field, some were at the church, and some were over at Bojangles Coliseum, and they didn't get the information out. And that ended that superintendent, by the way. He was a crook anyway, but that was the nail in his coffin, is when there's an active shooter on campus and you don't know where the kids are, you've got no plan, nobody was in charge, they all looked at one another, and it was just a disaster. So to Sparkle's point, somebody's got to take control, and you got to enact these procedures, whether you think they're real or not. This is not a drill. You got to enact your procedures. And to Michelle's point, you got to know what your evacuation levels are. Somebody's got to make the call, and got to be clearly communicated when something like that happens at your building. Because this time, I'm sure one of the reasons why we tell law enforcement immediately when there's a threat of a weapon, first thing they do is go to the kid's home and see if there's a weapon there, and see if the kid had access to a weapon. So you don't know if this is live or not. I mean, it could be, a false alarm, but every alarm is a real alarm. Moving on, Jessica pointed out, teachers not wearing their IDs. Again, if they don't wear their IDs and they trigger the doors, then they'll prop the doors. And that's what Althea was talking about. They don't wear their IDs and they prop the doors. That's exactly what happens. And then what good is it to have all security if you prop the door open, everybody just walks in? Mary said that their plan was lost. It was old, people not wearing their IDs. Melissa again pointed out evacuation tiers. Got to have those. You got to know, everybody's got to know where they are. We go tier 1, that means ball field. Tier 2, the church nearby. Tier 3, we're going to get on buses and leave the campus. And 2 of my pet peeves. Brenda pointed one of them out. She said things aren't exactly up to speed yet, but we got a new administrative team. Folks, you're only new till lunchtime the first day. After that, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Don't be telling me you're new. Did you get a check this month? Then it's your responsibility. You should never use the excuse that I'm new, because if you do, you won't get the chance to be old. It's your responsibility. You know, you get grace till lunchtime. After that, you better be on it. You're only new till lunchtime, first day. They're paying you a full salary. They expect full responsibility, full work. So, that's a good point. And the last one is, Sean talked about access control policy in place to let people in the building, but it's kind of hit and miss. So first thing I did when I became principal of Olympic High School in Charlotte was I moved the courier location box to a office something around the corner in the back. Courier came in the next day and just dumped stuff in the floor, and I explained to him, one of us is going to go home over this. I'm betting it's not me. This will be your only time. You will go around back and put your stuff in the back. I rearranged the office complex. We did not bring discipline in the front door. We went to A12. We put a bullpen in the back. We moved the school nurse back there. We didn't do nursing in the front. We didn't do discipline in the front. We didn't do deliveries in the front office. What did I want those people doing? I wanted them handling the calls of walk-in traffic. We didn't have security doors, but I wanted them watching who was coming in. Now that we have security doors, what good does it do if you're busy? You got 17 things going. You got 6 kids, nurses, people bringing stuff in, deliveries, kids screaming and yelling, discipline in the front, and they just reach over and push the button and let whoever in. Your front office ought to be as calm as a mortuary in front. Yes. You need to make sure that there's not 1,000 things going on in your front office so that people get distracted and just reach over and hit the button and let whoever in that comes bebopping along. And when people come in and try to coattail and catch the door and do all that, no, you need to make sure that that's not done as well. You need to clearly admit the people who come into your building. Again, all this security is of no good if you let the bad guy in, prop a door, or just open it because you're busy dealing with a kid that's got a bloody nose or whatever, or you got a discipline situation, or you got a delivery that you're trying to sign for. None of that stuff should happen in your front reception area that is the control access to your building. None of those things should be happening at the front of your building. So those are the things that caught my eye this week. I really, really liked the things that you had to say. Your answers were thorough. That's what I would expect. So let's talk about next week now. So let's look at next week. Interview an administrator concerning human resources practices. All right. This should include position openings, job announcements, obtaining candidates, interviewing process, and hiring process. All right, that's your first task. Now, here's the deal. I'll stop my share again. There are about 9 specific things that you have to do. That's called substantive due process. Remember, hiring is federal. Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. If you take federal money, you have to go by their rules on hiring. There's about 9 specific things that you have to do to meet all the substantive due process. Those 9 are the same for everybody. They're the same for everybody. Now, the procedural due process is they're different for everybody. Let me say that again. The procedural part of that is it's different from everybody. I'll use myself as the bad example, as I normally do. When I was principal in Burke County, I had to do everything. I had to go to my allotment sheet. I had to figure out what openings I had. I had to contact the newspaper to put the announcements in. I had to contact HR so they would put the announcements out on the wire. I had to call the references. I had to do I had to do everything. I had to make sure they got their drug test. I had to make sure we did the back. I had to do it all. I went to Charlotte-Mecklenburg. I didn't have to do any of it. Now, does that mean it didn't get done? No, but we had people hired to do it. So the substantive due process is the same 9 things. The procedural is who does those 9 things. All I had to do was call my analyst and say, send me 3 candidates. And I just picked the one I want and sent the name back. And if they got hired, fine. If they didn't, fine. But that was my only role, was to pick the 3. I didn't have to do curriculum interviews. I didn't have to do reference checks. I didn't have to check their licensure status. I didn't have to do anything. They were already, all I had to do was say, I want this one. In Burke County, I had to do everything. In Mecklenburg County, I didn't have to do anything. Now, I did a little interview with them that followed, the script of the interview. So I guess that would be one of the 9 things that I had to do in Mecklenburg. I had to do all 9 in Burke County. So the issue is it varies from district to district. Who does what, where, when. It's according to how many people you got in your human resources department. If you've got analysts, if you've got people who do background checks, if you've got your own police force, if you're the bigger districts, then you may not have to do a lot. But one of the things is districts that pile a lot of this on principals. I know it takes a lot of time, but you got to be thorough. You got to do it. Even though it puts a big time burden on you, it doesn't matter. You still got to do it. But if you don't, you're going to get sued. You're going to lose because it's federal. Equal employment is federal. You got to make sure that everybody gets the same 9 things happens with them. So you need to find out in your district who does what, where, and when. All right. The second part of that is about employee assistance. What benefits do you have? Now, don't talk about salaries. Let me be clear. Don't talk about salaries, but you need to know who to refer them to. If a teacher's got a question about their salary, you need to know who that is. Inquire about services such as employee assistance, compensation, and benefits. If they've got an insurance about their retirement, that's a benefit. If they've got issues with their insurance, if they've got issues with their retirement, if they think their check is short. Now, and I know you're not going to believe this because I'm the one that hired her. I hired a teacher so dumb one time. She got her first check. She come running down the office and said, they didn't pay me enough this month. I said, they don't pay any of us enough. But explain your problem to me. She said, well, this is not near what they promised that I'd get. I said, now, do you remember at the first faculty meeting when I had you fill out that form if you wanted your pay distributed over 10 months or 12 months? She said, yeah. I said, that wasn't an IQ test. If you got your pay from 10 months spread over 12, you get less every month. She didn't understand that. She thought if she chose to get 12, she'd get the same amount for 12 as for 10. I can't make that up. I hired a person that dumb. I did. And so, but you got to know easy things like that, but you can't get into my steps or my degrees. That's all HR. You don't need to get involved in the middle of that. I can tell you that right now. And the other thing about employee benefits, some of your bigger districts will have employee assistance program, EAPs. They can be good. They can help people that are going through tough times in their life, loss of loved ones, divorce, issues of middle age. But also they can offer protections and hurt you in the long run as well. Had a drug addict. She went and reported herself and was getting treatment. And so when caught her using at school, couldn't do anything about it. They protected her. Now, I'm not hard-hearted that I wanted to fire her on the spot, but I wanted to be able to hire a long-term sub. No, because she had employee assistance, I had to hire a day-to-day sub. It was a very difficult year getting through with her in that. But you got to know those rules, if they're getting treatment or not. not just for drug use, job abandonment. If they don't show up for 3 days, you've got to know, are they being treated for depression? Are they doing grief counseling, drug, alcohol? I mean, what's going on with this person? So if I had an issue with a person, first thing I do is call HR and say, is this person an EAP? Are they protected by this? Or can I do the normal due process with them? You need to know that. And the other is, overall, this is kind of a third thing, overall for your district, how do you go about doing position openings? This is not the hiring. This is the paperwork in. Who does position? How do you determine if you've got a position open? Who does the job announcement? Who obtains the candidates? Who does the curriculum interviews? And so how is the process? It's basically the same thing as the other. I've just got it there twice, but I want you to delineate, make sure that, again, it's pretty much the same thing, but there could be a differential there. Just make sure that you go back through it again. If there's anything that varies in the actual hiring of employees and the acquiring employees versus hiring them, the way to get them in the applicant flow, understand that piece, and then what happens when they're in the flow. Because sometimes we have pools, sometimes we have job fairs. I mean, how does that piece of it work? This is the reason why. If you have a system that gets applicants into the flow, you can't shortcut that system and take applications at your school. They have to go through the applicant flow. Now, if you don't have that, people can drop by your building or could email you a resume. I could do that in Burke County. I could not do that in Mecklenburg County. I could not accept a resume or recommend somebody to get into applicant flow. That was an entirely different system. So you've got to delineate, is applicant flow different than the hiring process? Yes. How does it work in my district? Can I talk to people before we get them into the process? Or it had to be an applicant flow before I can talk to them. Again, Burke County, you could talk to whoever. You could take, people could stop by your building. You could take resumes, no big deal. Charlotte, Mecklenburg, you could not talk to somebody until they were an applicant flow and they'd actually been referred to you. Big difference. Got to do the same for everybody. Now, the danger in Burke County is somebody sued you because you were arbitrary. You had talked to somebody, but not to somebody else. Nepotism, friendships, that kind of thing. That was completely off the table in Charlotte because you couldn't talk to anybody until they were vetted candidates sent to your school. You need to understand that. Do we have an applicant flow process? Or can we just talk to anybody and then later interview them? You got to know the difference. Okay. So that was last week's. Did a great job. This week, I'm expecting the same. You should be continuing to work on your OMA task 1. As I said, I've gotten one in. It was really good. Remember, task 2 is going to be really quick, but make sure your task 1 is very thorough and covers all the things that you need to. One of the things that I sometimes see on it, make sure you got everything from your report card, including your academic achievement. Make sure you highlight that. All right, I've gone over my notes. I want to talk about the first case study in depth. I'll share my screen. I talked about it some last week. Hopefully you had an opportunity to read over the first case study. Let's see, module. Case review case study 1. All right, I'll do that. And here it is, module 4, case study 1. All right. Let me move that out of the way and that out of the way. See if we can download this and make it a little bigger so I can read it. All right. Will cheating strike Bobby out? All right. Now, I'm not going to read it all to you, but this is, make sure that you've got the right case study here. All right. Again, this is it right here. Now, this is a case where the teacher was in the wrong. She manipulated the state grading scale or the local grading scale, which, you know, derives from your state board of education. Now, your state board of education is pretty clear. State testing counts 30% of a kid's grade. Now, if you're in North Carolina, the EOG or the EOC counts 30%. Now, the variation is in South Carolina, for you, my wonderful South Carolina folks, yours is 20 and 10. Well, what do you mean 20 and 10, Dale? Well, SC Ready counts 20, but your quarterlies count 10. So in the end, your state testing still counts 30%. It's just how it's divided up. Coursework, classwork, class-made tests count another 40%. So that now we're up to 70. And then we have assignments, homework, and maybe teacher-made tests. Those count 10% each in aggregate for the year. Okay? Now, they send that guidance out to the local board who adopts their policies and sets around that, but you can't exceed that. So in this case, Bobby turned in, you could say, well, it was an out-of-class assignment. Well, that, in my opinion, that means homework. So you could say, well, nobody else is an assignment. Okay, still, either way we count it, it can only, all of them for the year can only count 10%. The teacher in this case declared that this assignment was worth more than 50% of the yearly grade and failed Bobby for the year. Now, no due process. That means it's a zero tolerance expulsion. That's federal law violation. Can't do zero tolerance. State law was violated and we made homework, one homework or one assignment, whichever you interpret it, count more than the 10% in aggregate that it can count for the whole year. Local board policy as well. So local board, state, federal law has all been violated. Now, you say, but gave him the opportunity to go to summer school. Federal law says doesn't matter. Even if you get offer an alternative placement, it's still a zero tolerance expulsion. He's still out for a year. That's the most you can do to a kid. He could have brought a gun and got less. Now, as I showed you, the principal is the one who signs the final grade, to grade and classify. 115C 288A. Same thing in South Carolina. So the principal asks the superintendent what to do. Now, the superintendent can't tell the principal anything because who does the grade and classify? That would be the principal. So students say, well, the superintendent shouldn't. No, the superintendent can't tell him anything other than be careful. It would be a violation of law if the superintendent said assign this or give that. The principal has to report an activity like this to the superintendent. That's in the law as well. So the principal fulfilled his duty and informed the superintendent. The superintendent said, just be careful. I've been informed now, but I can't tell you what to do. That would be a violation of state law. So they're both clean. The teacher is at fault here. Now, full disclosure, Bobby's probably a turd. His family's probably turds too. But the teacher saw the opportunity to take a run at Bobby. You've got to focus on that. Now, don't get into this weeds of it's, well, said the policy said that the kid may receive a failing grade on the assignment only. But you can't do a failing grade on the assignment and give him a punishment. Code of conduct for your district tells you what you can do for cheating. You could have him, give him a reduced grade or fail him on on that one particular assignment, or you could do 1 day of ISS and let him do it over. But I don't think you'll find, you need to look at the code of conduct for your district. Was it safe for cheating? The one that I use, Charlotte Mecklenburg, the most you could give that kid is 1 day of in-school suspension. You put him out for a whole year. Under our legal standard, that would be capricious. Again, that would be like shooting me for smoking. I shouldn't be smoking. I'm not a smoker. That's one of the few bad habits I don't have. But it seems to me like you'd understand that shooting somebody would be, a little over the top punishment for smoking. That would be capricious. putting a kid out for a whole year for cheating, it's the same thing. It's that ridiculous. You've got to understand that. You need to be tracing No Child Left Behind. You need to be looking at the school to prison pipeline, expelling kids, what happens to them. That's on the ethical side. When you put this case under the ethical microscope, understanding that when kids that set out fail for a whole year, most of them end up in prison. You're just contributing to the school to prison pipeline. Zero tolerance expulsions are against the law. There's a reason why. You need to dig down and see all the layers of this case. You need to look at the principal's actions. You need to look at the teacher's actions. You need to look at the superintendent, but you need to know the law. Equal protection under the 14th Amendment against excessive punishment. That would be capricious. So that's the case study. Now, what do I expect? I expect that, your teams will, your teams, you'll get together, you'll do a collaborative PowerPoint, and you'll be able to present your case in a couple of weeks. And you need to work through all the questions, and you need to work through all the ethical paradigms. Again, don't get sidetracked by that. Well, it says he may fail. You have to understand. You can't write a policy that says you can fail for the year. That would violate the federal guidelines. He may fail that assignment, and he may not. It's according if you want to do a punishment. I always thought cheating was a disciplinary. Why would I want to punish a kid's grade? But that's just me. You can go the grade route, or you can go the disciplinary punishment route, like in-school suspension. But you can't do both, folks. That'd be double jeopardy. You can't punish him twice. That'd be capricious. Punishing him twice for the same incident. I don't like doing academic punishment for behavior issues. If it's in the code of conduct, it's a behavior issue. Again, it's a behavior issue. Why are you doing an academic punishment for a behavior issue? That's not smart on your part. It's kind of hard to defend. Give him the ISS and have him make it up. Off you go. This ain't hard. But a year-long failing for a whole year, regardless of the summer school deal. Now, there's a lot of pieces in this one to throw you off the track. Doesn't matter who his parents are. And see, the issue, why I like this case study, is we get all bent out of shape over Bobby, who's from an affluent family. But most of the time, it's our Title I kids. It's our kids of color that this kind of stuff happens to, and nobody says a peep about them. That's the part that I like about this case is we get all up in arms when it's some well-to-do kid. How many times has this happened in school to kids who aren't well-to-do? We need to, the least of us. What did Jesus say? What you've done to the least of us, you've done to me. This is one of those cases. Unfortunately, we do this kind of stuff to kids all the time, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't, but we do. But we do it to the ones that don't have any political pull or power or nobody's looking out for. Your job is to be, as a school administrator, is to be a champion for kids. Let me say that again. Your job is not to be a champion for teachers. Your job is to be a champion for kids. If Dr. Maraglio was with us tonight, she would tell you how she didn't get to be a principal fellow the first time she applied at UNC Charlotte, because she was dumb enough to walk in and say, when they asked her why she wanted to be a principal fellow, she said, I want to be a champion for teachers. She didn't get it. Everybody thought she would. She was a star, Charlotte Mecklenburg. She was smart enough to kind of debrief, and she asked Mark, why do you think I didn't? He said, well, it's real simple. You don't get into administration to be champion for teachers. Your job is to be a champion for kids. This is one of those case studies. This is about being a champion for kids. The teacher was in the wrong here. Again, we're going to have one where the superintendent was in the wrong and a couple where the principal was in the wrong. This happens to be the first one, because this is the kind of thing that you need to understand. It exemplifies, doesn't matter who the kid is. We look out for our kids. We do the right thing. Questions you have about your responsibility on the first case study. You know that you got a group presentation due in week 4, 2 weeks from tonight. All right, let's talk about task stream. You've got the OMA and SCIP due this semester. You also have to keep up your competency folio. So let me go through it and remind you how to get into it, and what we're looking for. All right, to that end, some of this stuff out of the way. I have dropped a handy dandy file in right before tonight. Right after tonight. Task stream competency folio. So here is a reminder where you find your artifacts that go in your competency folio. So let me open the first one. So let's look at what we're going to be doing this semester. I'll download this one. So we're going to be doing the OMA, and we're going to be doing the skip. All right. Your SACS report, your NC report card, your school improvement plan, teacher working conditions survey, best practices data from your walkthrough observations. Again, that's a holdover from the APTEL. That's task 2. And I won't read all these. All of these things are artifacts when you pull them up that show that you did all the things that you were doing. These are all artifacts that go along with those. These are things that you can enter, and you say, well, where do they go? Well, just look at the number right here. 10, 16, and 18. So your NC report card could go in under what is 10, 16, and 18. 10 is global perspective, 16 is results orientation, and 18 systems thinking. I've got it all laid out for you right here. The same from the skip. So these are the artifacts that you will generate from your work this semester. Now, open-ended artifacts. I have a document for those as well. Now, these are kind of up to you. Again, I told you, I love pictures. I love pictures. Agendas, minutes, anything that shows that you were there and in charge for your open-ended. So let's look at our open-ended. So if you address a large or small group of adults, if you've got an agenda that shows that you did that, or you got a picture of you standing in front of them, that would be an artifact for dialogue, inquiry, or communication. If you conduct a parent group meeting and you've got a picture with those parents, or if you've got the agenda or minutes, that would be one for change management. If you sit in on a teacher interview and you've got a list, maybe like the question that you ask in the interview, that would be a good artifact for that one. So you can see all the things that you could do here this semester. Now, so that's where you get your artifacts from. They're not just random things. All right. Now, where do we put them? So we go to our TaskStream account and we sign in. And we don't go in our DRF. We come up here to folios and web pages. We pull up our, now we use the same one that we had last semester. We don't make one each semester. We use the same one that we had the last semester. And we click on the first one, communication. All right, so we read through each of these. All right, we did the AppSell. You should have an artifact from it from last semester. We're not doing the SOP, but we could do an open-ended one here this semester. Okay, change management. Again, same thing. We could do an open-ended one here. Conflict management, AppSell, AppTel, we could do an open-ended one. Creative thinking, open-ended. Oh boy, we could do 2 or 3 here. Look at this one. We need one from the OMA, from that list that I just showed you, one from the skip, and you can do an open-ended if you want to. Delegation, one from the skip, one open-ended if you want to. Now, when it says this, we got to have these. Open-ended is optional. You could do an open-ended next semester. But if I were you, I would do as many as I could as I went. But just click through each one of these. We're not doing the AppTel or SOP. Put an open-ended one in if you don't have one already in there. AppTel cap. Caps off, again, open-ended. You can do an open-ended one. Put one in for the skip, one open-ended if you need it. One from the skip, one open-ended. Open-ended. One from the OMA, one open-ended. Oh boy, there's another one. They could get a twofer. One from the OMA and one from the skip as well. Results orientation, one from the skip. Sensitivity, one from the OMA. Systems thinking, OMA. Open-ended if you want to. OMA. Time management, skip, and visionary, open-ended if you want to. Remember, you don't have to put anything under digital learning competencies. That's just to remind you what they are. Because as you know, they're embedded in this one, just like the first one. One of them has to follow, this outline here of a digital learning competency. But I put them where they would be most likely to. I put these distributed, the 18 of these in your 21 competencies. Pretty much anything you put in there will fit that if it's a communication competency. So that's how you go about doing your competency folio. And then you request comments from me. I will be one of your, so I could do a communication, request comments, communication, continue, and it gives a list of people, and then my name would be there, and you simply choose me, and off we go. We're good to go. Now, just to help me, point of privilege here. If you know you're going to put 4 or 5 in, wait till you get the 4 or 5 in, and then when you hit request comments, as you can see, it will let you pick the 4 or 5 that you put in. And then you hit continue, and it'll send me one email. Every time you hit continue and you say you put 5 in there, it'll send me 5 emails. And don't hit all areas if you just put 1 in, because then I got to go through all 21 of these to find the one you put in. So if you put 21 in, that's good. Then hit all, request comments on all. If you didn't, just click on the ones you did and wait till the end so it just sends me 1 email. All right. Questions you have for me on your competency folio this semester. Again, we've got it. You can see what your artifacts are from the OMA and the skip. You know what open-ended is. If you do any of those things, you can put those in there. But don't get behind. Try to get 21 in there this summer. All right. Everybody good on that? All right. Questions you have for me? All right. Let's talk about human resources. Got just enough time. Thank goodness. Y'all don't want to see me have to read this stuff. I've got 2 really excellent PowerPoints here. They're pretty much the same thing that Dr. Griffin Jordan did for us. She talks about the life cycle of managing human resources, recruiting, hiring, evaluating, supporting. Again, this recruitment piece. Some districts let you go to job fairs and recruit, some don't. Know what the rules are in your district. Again, we talked about hiring. What is the process in your district? Remember, the board hires, but you make a recommendation to the superintendent who recommends to the board. Know what the process is here. You know that we have to evaluate all teachers. Their cycle is dependent upon their status and years of experience. The younger they are, the more we have to evaluate them. And then we support them for professional development activities. And you know what that is. You did a professional growth plan last semester. So if we work through here, hiring, here's the things that I was talking about, all the things that have to be done. Again, who does these is this is what happens in Durham. And again, right here, this is the 9 things between this one and this one that you have to do. Evaluation piece, there's the manual. I have it pulled up tonight. It's in under tonight's Zoom session 2, module 2. If you've never read a teacher evaluation manual, you need to read it. And then there's the annual evaluation process. You need to follow that one and know what that is. Again, this is teachers, leadership. This is all the different things that you have to do and you have to know according to their job category. You have to evaluate them on different criteria. Here's a nice handy dandy chart for you. Standard 6 is the growth piece. That's EVOS we talked about last semester. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And then, how often certified staff talks about these. Abbreviated, the full standard, again, this is according to what their certification and status is. On this one right here, classified staff. Data manager, record specialist, this process varies by district. That's why you got to ask, again, how often do I have to evaluate all my classified people? You need to find that out. It varies by district. State has an annual. This is your state sets the teacher evaluation cycle, and your certified people, the different ones. Your district does the classified people because they're local district employees. Support and retain those. Teachers market, it is, but Dr. Griffin Jordan would argue it's a teacher's market, but don't settle. Get an amazing sub is better than a horrible teacher and quicker to replace. Don't just take people because you can get them, even though you've got them. Know that you're going to get a lot of turnover, especially your new ones, but treat your subs really well like family. Don't, if you're giving out lunches, make sure they eat. If you're giving out shirts, your subs are golden, folks. Make sure that you work with those subs and treat them just like you would regular faculty. That was a good point that she made. Employee assistants, again, support them. They can get assistance. Teacher appreciation. Lead, don't micromanage. Practice what you preach. And then recruiting, do social media, do swag, get your name and your image out there, do job recruitment fairs. Recruiting is really important, and you need to be involved in it if your district will let you. You need to be recruiting so that you'll know who you got out there in that can replace when you get retirements, people leaving, those kinds of things. And then hiring, again, here's the system of hiring right there. It is, as I was talking about, that's the 9 things in the substantive due process. So she's put together a really good comprehensive PowerPoint for you in terms of hiring teachers. Here is the manual that I talked about. And it has all the things in here that you need to do. I would encourage you to get nieces trained by your district as soon as you can, so that when you get hired as an AP, you can do observations right away. Don't be the weak link, folks. Do not be the weak link and everybody's having to pull your weight. Now, here's something, I'm sure you all know this. Let's say because of the age of a faculty, we got a lot more formal observations to do than you would normally have in a school. Let's say you've got 60 faculty members and you've got to do 180 formal observations this year. You've got a 3-person administrative team. That would be 60 evaluations each. That's a lot. But what happens if one of those people isn't yet approved or certified in their district to do NESA state evaluations? Does that change the 180 that you have to do for the year? No. What changes is the divisor. Instead of dividing 3 into that 180, you divide it by 2. So that means that instead of having to do 60, both those people got to do 90 till you can get up to speed. So the question is, how does this relate to South Carolina? It's exactly the same thing. Yes, there is a South Carolina teacher evaluation handbook. It's the same model. It looks pretty much the same. I'm careful not to show those things because we're not supposed to. But we do show some things, but we're supposed to use North Carolina as the example. But South Carolina has exactly the same thing. It's the same system in terms of how many observations. Again, it goes by years of experience and certification. Some can be on abbreviated, but new teachers, all BTs, all beginning teachers get what, 4? And then as they age through the system, they get fewer and fewer. But the issue is we have so many BTs now because of COVID and so many retirements. We have so many BTs. But again, you have to figure out how many formals do I have this year? 180 for a 60-person staff. That wouldn't be unusual. A lot of BTs, they get 4.
I think we have 6. They have 2 3-man teams.
Yeah, but I'm talking about for the administrative team. That's a
Right.
great point. See, there's other folks got to do them too. That's a lot of work. Thank you. Is that Melissa that said that? See, we're just talking about administrative.
Yes, sir.
Yes, but Melissa's absolutely right. They've got to have a mentor that's doing them too. BTs are a lot of work, but just for the administrative team, you've got to hold your end up on the administrative team because got 180 to do this year. If we got 3 people doing them, 60 still a great day. That's still 1 every 3 days. But think about, you got to do, you got to do 90. That's 1 every other day now. That puts a real big burden. Now, most districts will not, just because you got the AP job, they will not let you do state certifications. I mean, state certified teachers evaluations until you have passed your NESIS training for the district. You should inquire about that now. A lot of times they have that in the summertime. A lot of times they'll let you go before you get hired. That'd be one of the things I would ask about today. Small said she only had 1 observation. I'm betting they were supposed to do them other 2, weren't they? And they just did a drive-by. They just did a drive-by. Well, that's what happens when you get behind, or you don't have enough people to do them, or one of your people's not certified. You start doing drive-bys then. What happens if something goes wrong in that room and they find out an administrator just did a drive-by? That's not a walkthrough, that's a drive-by. You lose your job. That teacher does something totally unrelated and there's an investigation as to why you didn't catch that teacher being a sexual predator or not, doing something bad. And then you say, well, you were in the room. What did you see? And then it comes to find out, well, you weren't really in the room. You just did a drive-by. Uh-oh. Of all the things that I would shortcut on, teacher observations would not be the thing. They would not be the thing. Because that's easy to document. Because teacher's going to tell it. Small was supposed to come by. She didn't come by. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. When you signed that evaluation form, you attest that you were in that room for that minimum amount of time. So you need to be trained and you need to hold up because they may love you, your administrative team, but if you're throwing them under the bus here, not doing your observations, that won't go well. You're not putting your data in Power School, that won't go well. Things that require training and certification, you better get those done quickly so you can be a part of the team. Now, a teacher's final evaluation is 75% of their formal observations and 25% from EVOS growth. I won't go through EVOS again. You know what that does a kid make his projected growth score? You went through that last semester. But I'll remind you, that counts 25% of a teacher's evaluation. And the formal observations count 75%. Now, in South Carolina, it varies a little bit. Now, remember, in South Carolina, some people are still using EVOS, but most have switched over to SLO, Student Learning Outcomes. It's exactly the same thing as EVOS. They just don't have to pay near as much for it. But again, performance is generally 25%, formal observations is 75%. But the problem comes in, you're not in that room, you're filling out, you're doing them drive-bys like Small said she got, and everything's okay. And at the end of the year, the performance comes out and it's just awful. Like the two don't match. We call that in the business inter-rater reliability. So what we would hope, what we would expect is if the teachers formal observations are a pretty good predictor of what their test scores, their growth scores are going to be for their kids, their performance scores. Problem comes in, you've been saying all year long, they're doing a great job. Oh, it looks good. Thumbs up. Attaboy. End of the year, none of the kids in the room make growth. Uh-oh. Then we have to call into question your competence as an administrator to be formally observing people if you didn't know that it was going to be a train wreck when we got to testing time at the end of the year. On the other hand, I've also seen where, all year long, just devil teachers, they can't teach a lick. And then at the end of the year, every one of their kids made growth. Uh-oh. Again, you don't know what you're doing. Inter-rater reliability. So you better take these things seriously. Know what you're looking for when you go in those rooms. Leanne, you got a question?
What do you do, like, when you're talking about that? Like, we've noticed that 8th grade math across the state does not perform. And the teachers are working and they're good teachers. And this has been a North Carolina issue.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm in that position. I'm an 8th grade math teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and the test is almost not passable
Yeah.
for most students.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? Like, I mean, my evaluations are up high, but my
Yeah.
scores are down low.
Yeah, but the good thing is your final evaluation, your summative should take care of that. I mean, that should be factored in your final. That's why it can't count more than 25%. It can count less. And that's what we do in those tested areas. I've seen it count as little as 5%. I remember, it's been a minute, but 5th grade math scores were that way one year. And state passing average was 29%. Let me say that again. The state passing average was 29%. So we just simply told principals 5% on that this year, and 95 on the formal observations. We can do that. It can't count more than 25, but we can make it count less on the performance. And if you've got a tested area where you know that across the state kids didn't do well, you simply drop it. But they can't crucify you with it because they can't count it more than 25%. But generally the district makes the call on that. In terms of let's drop that 25% down to 10, 15, 5, because the state average on that 8th grade math test was so low. We can't beat the teachers up over that. We can't shoot the messenger.
It's currently only 13% pass rate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been that way for about 5 years now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The first time we saw it it's been early on in testing was 5th grade. And when it was only at 29%, everybody was like, wait a minute, there's a problem with this system. Early on in the value added system is what I'm talking about, whether you call it SLOs or EVOS or whatever. We found out that, you can't hold teachers to an unreasonable standard. That's the problem with the test. That's not the teacher, that's the test. And so at 13%, I would count growth only maybe 5% is what I would do. Might even be less than that. But the good thing is they can't use it as a stick to beat you. They can't crucify you with it. And that's the whole point of the formal observations counting 75%, is that you can't just run somebody out of town if they because the test is not reliable. It doesn't show what kids have learned. It's a valid test, but it failed. It passed the validity test. It didn't pass the reliable test. It doesn't measure reliably what kids know. And those are the two data. In data, those are two things we work on: is validity and reliability. All right. So that's that piece. All right. Look at me. Questions you have for me? You can read all this stuff. You can read those PowerPoints. We'll have, I'm banking some time because, when we have case studies in a couple of weeks, that might last 3 hours. So I'm banking some time here. I'm going to give you an extra hour tonight to be working in your groups or doing whatever you need to get your case study ready. Next week will be another 2-hour night. I try to go on and off like that, but I'm going to bank some time tonight. So questions you have for me?
Where did you find that the task stream artifacts for like OMA and the skip? I was following along, but I couldn't find it on my end.
All right. If you will go to your class right after module 3.
Oh, I had the module 3.
So right here, I've got module 3 opened up, 2 opened up for tonight. If you don't have it open, it's right behind it. If you open it up, it'll still be there, just be at the end of all these things here. It's
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
before you get to module 3. It's between 2 and 3.
Yeah, I open it and it says this learning module is empty.
No, you just click on it and it'll open up and drop down.
Yeah, I did that. I clicked on it and it says, as a check
Anybody
mark.
else having that problem? All right. Which shell are you in? Are you in the C2 or C4 shell?
Me?
Yeah.
C2 or C4? What do you mean?
It
Yeah,
works on my end. I opened it.
Let me see if it's the C4 shell that's not working.
can I share my screen with you?
Hold 1 second. Let me look right here.
That's yeah. So look, that's mine right here. So it's right here.
I just fixed it. You should be able to go in now and pull them up. I had them. These things default back to hidden. You have to go back in and turn them back on every day.
Let me see. Module 2.
Yeah, right below module 2, it says task string.
Okay, now it showed up. Yeah, it's up there
There
now.
you go. It
Thank you very
defaults
much.
back to hidden. Thanks for catching that. If you can't see something, let me know. These things, every time that they go in and work on them, they default. They need to learn to set the default to open, not closed. And every time anything happens, doggone it, it closes everything. So I went in today and opened everything back up. I just must have missed those.
All right, thank you.
Because they were working on Banner over the weekend. Michelle, question?
I just want to clarify on the peer reviews, because last class you said it 2 different ways, so I want to make sure that I have it clear. Peer reviews, do we do just one for the OMA and 1, 2, and 3, or do we do 1, 2, and 3 for all of them?
1, 2, and you do tasks OMA and skip tasks 1, 2, and 3. So that'd be 6 total for the semester.
Okay. Thank you.
That'd be 6 total. And you don't have to do any videos. You're going to do your videos on case study night. Don't have to do any of that. Now, don't wait on any, don't wait on people on those. And when you get it, if you've already moved on to the next task, thank them for doing it, but nobody should be waiting on either end. Nobody should be waiting for one to pop up, and nobody should be waiting on somebody to give them peer review feedback before they move on to the next task. As soon as I see it, I'm moving you on. Don't get behind on peer reviewing. Peer reviewing is not as important as churning these things out this summer. Robin, you've got a question?
Yes, sir. Really quickly. Our task 1, it goes under the OMA task 1 for review, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's where you would go and get it to review one of your colleagues. I review it there as well and tell you, looks good, excellent, continue with peer. If I don't see a review attached to it, and I'm usually the first one, sometimes people beat me in. Your goal is to beat me in one time this summer on a task. But I will go in and I'll say, excellent, continue with peer review if there's not a review attached to it, but move on to the next task, move on to task 2. and then you move on. If it's good enough, you can drop it in an assignment drop box, and you're done with that when you move on to the next.
Okay, thank
I need
you.
to see it first in review, and gives your colleagues a chance to look at it as well. If there's something missing, I'll tell you in review, and then you fix it in review. And then once I say move on to the next task, boom, you can drop it in the assignment drop box. You're ready to go. And I'll tell you exactly what's missing. I won't just say this needs revision. How helpful is that? I'll tell you exactly what needs to be fixed. You're missing this or you're missing that. Now I'm not gonna get into syntax and spelling and grammar and all that. They taught you APA last semester. We're about content this semester. We're about moving. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there. We get after it. We be moving. Other questions? All right, last thing for the evening. Let me share my screen. Looking at next week, go ahead and open up your module for next week. Make sure next week we'll do EC. You might want to look over some of this stuff. I'm hoping there's always a EC teacher in the group. I'm hoping somebody will be able to help me with this because I'm not an expert, and my expert, he got hired away from me. So, but we're going to we'll be talking about EC next week, IDA. Again, we ought to be able to knock that one out in an hour because this one will be at least 2 or 3 hours. And then behind it, this one's not too bad. This one's going to be a bear. This one will be a bear. But again, take the win when you can get it. Michelle, you have another question?
Yeah, it's for me, not for the whole group.
All right. Anybody else have anything for the good of the group?
Where exactly do we post our peer reviews?
On the discussion board, on that thread where you got it.
On the thread? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Posted on the thread. Yes. Thank you. Just posted on the thread. All right. Anything else? All right. I'll turn the recording off. I'll see you all next Tuesday. Y'all have a good week. Get started on those case studies. Love you. Mean it.